Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Smut Chat with Jeen Bean. I am joined by my amazing guest, Kris. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kris. I'm one of the founding members of the Smutchat.
Kris, we are so excited to have you. And by we, I mean me, because it's just me at the moment. But super happy that you're here. So today, we're talking about purity culture. Purity culture, it refers to a systemic set of ideologies. They're most prominently set forth by the Christian church, although it's notable that many religions and cultures have similar beliefs around women and sexuality, that promotes the idea of sexual purity and chastity as a measure of one's worth. It's basically the idea that you should wait until marriage to have sex. It almost always places the burden of maintaining sexual purity on women and girls, and this is both for girls to remain sexually pure themselves as well as sort of being held responsible for the sexual purity of boys too, which is interesting. Common everyday example is like dress codes, right? Like girls who have to be sent home because their shorts are too short or their spaghetti straps are too thin. Instead of telling boys to not look at shoulders, we tell girls to go home and change, which of course also then impacts their education. That's a whole other soapbox that I can get onto that I'm not going to right now. There's a lot to unpack. Honestly, this topic could just be like its own 10-part series.
Mhm.
I want to be clear that I'm not condemning Christianity here. Faith is a super powerful thing. It brings so many people peace and joy and meaning. But we want to talk about maybe the teachings of the church that can actually be really harmful and create some shame, particularly for women and girls. So, all that to say, before you jump in, Kris, you had mentioned that this is a topic that's really important to you to speak on and to think about, something that you think about a lot in your day to day. So I would love to just hear like a little bit more about your background and why you wanted to talk about this topic.
Yeah, so I was raised primarily in the American evangelical movement, which kind of runs the gamut. There are a lot of documentaries and all sorts of things out there. So I spent my whole upbringing in that, but then even continued into that as an adult. I was part of a lot of people do call it a cult. I was kind of sort of part of a religious cult. There's blogs about it, there's YouTube videos, podcasts about it. And I was involved in that in my early adulthood. And I've only left American evangelical Christianity within the last 10 years or so. So the teachings of purity culture have formed my view of myself, how I show up in my partnerships, how I feel about sexuality, how I feel about my own sexuality. I've spent a lot of time over the last maybe 15 plus years kind of challenging that, trying to make sense of it and how it makes me feel, how it makes culture feel, because it's prevalent everywhere. Something that I said recently to some of the smut cap girls, the ones that aren't American, in explaining purity culture, a lot of Americans experience it even if they aren't religious. They don't go to church. It is very much ingrained in our society here in America. I think that's evident with, what many people are seeing on the news and what's happening in our country at the moment, but this is just the way it's been here for a very long time. Also, most American teenagers have had some contact with some churchy thing. They have a churchy friend in high school that takes them to youth group. They go to some sort of youth retreat. Back when I was growing up, they took some sort of purity pledge. Britney Spears was wearing a purity ring. The Jonas Brothers were wearing purity rings. Jessica Simpson was known for being a virgin. So it's very much ingrained in our culture, whether or not you're a religious person. So it takes a lot to dig out of that and to challenge that thought system.
Yeah, you know what's so interesting? Like, first of all, the how ingrained it is in sort of like American culture. I think it's deeply rooted in patriarchal beliefs
Yeah.
and placing a lot of undue blame on women and girls for sexual temptation, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it.
Yeah.
So I think some people know this, but not a lot of people know this. But I converted to Christianity my senior year of high school.
Mm.
So from the ages of like 17 to 20-ish. Yeah, just about. I was a pretty hardcore Southern Baptist Christian.
Wow.
So like from senior year of high school through my first 2 years of college, I studied abroad in New Zealand and met a boy and lived a different life, and then came back and was like, can't be my life anymore. That's the short version of what happened to me. But in those 3 years, like, because you just said you were raised in this belief system, I was there for 3 years, and I still have moments of like, oh, like I have to like catch myself. So like
Yeah.
that thing you were saying about like digging yourself out of it and sort of like rewiring your brain,
Hmm.
like yeah, especially for people who have been in it in a little bit longer. Yeah, the amount of exposure, I would say, is probably tougher.
Agree. Agree.
I'm intuiting that there might be experiences around like shame, discomfort with your body. I would love to hear more about, like, maybe let's start with your body. What was your experience? Like, did you have a sex talk? Did you have the birds and bees talk? Which, by the way, is a bullshit phrase because, like, it is not clear what that means. Nobody knows what that means.
Yeah. There was a talk in sixth grade about menstruation.
Yes.
So everyone had that, the sciencey part of it. So I went to a Christian high school for ninth through 12th grade. My mom pulled me out of public school and sent me to Christian high school. The Christian high school that I went to was actually really similar to, if anyone is familiar with the Duggar family, my Christian high school was very similar to their beliefs, which is funny because that wasn't my belief system at home. Like I wasn't, I was evangelical. I wasn't fundamentalist like the Duggars, but that was the Christian school that my mom wanted me to go to. And I went and I graduated not a moment too soon. They specifically did not have any sort of sexual education in that school, in high school, because they felt that that was the parents' responsibility. So I knew I wasn't going to get it there. If I had gone to public school, maybe I would have had a little bit more education, or at least putting condoms on a banana, something very, typical of like an American teenager. But I didn't have any of that because you shouldn't have been doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Abstinence, like any of like sex talk that I had came from church events, youth conventions. There was a Christian singer who was very popular in my adolescence. Her name was Rebecca St. James. Her big platform was about waiting until marriage. She would have concerts, and at these concerts she would sign an abstinence pledge. Signed one. Didn't abide by it, but I definitely signed it.
Me neither. Weird. That's so weird.
I love signing contracts and going back on my word. But it was just part of, the whole thing. So all that to say, I didn't have an official sex talk, but there were talks about it, and it was don't do it. I did have a little bit of a talk with my mother. I believe it was early in my high school education, so like ninth grade. So 14, 15. And she told me that I shouldn't have sex before marriage because I shouldn't want a man to see me. Wouldn't you be so embarrassed to have a man who is not your husband see your body? Boom.
Yeah, I think whew, man, there's a lot. Where do I even start with
Yeah.
that? Because there's so much there's so many different paths we can go down.
So many.
Um
This would be Smutchat, like a week long.
that's what I'm saying. This could be
Smutchat.
like a 10-part series. Like we actually might need to do like a part 1 and a part 2,
Right,
which I'd be down
right.
for. Yeah, I think so. I had kind of a sex ed. It was like a health class, it was overall health in high school. I also had it was fifth grade menstruation thing. But what's so wild to me now when I think back about that, like, okay, great that I learned about my period a little bit, but like not super well.
Yeah.
It's wild that we didn't learn about the boys. Like I didn't know anything about like male genitalia or functioning for years.
Mhm.
Like, and I'm talking like into college years, right?
Yeah.
And then in high school we had like a health class where we talked about, it wasn't purely abstinence only sex ed, but it was adjacent to that. It was very like the only way to really prevent an STI transmission or a pregnancy is to not have sex.
Mhm.
But we did talk about condoms and diaphragms and a couple of like dental dams, like a couple things.
Wow, that's
Um,
actually really, is that normal for public school to talk about things other than condoms?
I don't know if it's normal,
Never heard that.
but I know that I learned about it. Actually, my husband might have been the one that told me about dental dams. But we definitely learned about the diaphragm. I
Wow.
remember holding one. Like I remember seeing one and like
Wow.
holding it. But weirdly, so we talked about condoms, but we didn't learn how to put them on. We didn't do the like condom on a banana thing. So I actually, this is a question for you if you're willing to share. How did you learn how to put a condom on? Because the first time I did it to a male partner, he taught me how to do it, and he was very gentle. I was really lucky. I found like a very good first partner who was very patient, understanding, and like walked me through things, but not in a judgmental way. But I didn't know how to do it until he taught me. So, where did you learn that?
Um, I've never put a condom on a partner.
Oh my gosh! I mean, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. They've always put them on, or sometimes they haven't, and they were like, it feels better without it. A different conversation for a different
Sure.
day.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally, maybe.
My God. I never put a condom on a partner. I think I could. I just have never done it. They've always done it themselves. So I've that's an experience that I've never had.
Okay, well, no shade and no
Yeah.
shame. But it is interesting. Isn't that it, like even something as simple as that,
Yes.
like in our late 30s is still something, so it's like, first of all, I'm confident you can figure it out, but
Yeah, it's
um
I think I get.
there's probably a TikTok video about it somewhere,
Sure.
so
I'll get a banana.
yeah.
Give
Yeah,
myself the experience in high school that I
exactly.
never had.
The healing experience of putting a condom
By
on for the first
myself
time.
in my house.
Um it's amazing. Okay, so that leads me to like questions about body because I do think one of the things we don't talk about when it comes to purity culture, which by the way, like the phrase purity culture implies that you're able to be impure,
Yeah.
which is inherently gross to me. The
Yes.
idea that human beings are impure
Yes.
based on something as random as like your virginity, which
Yes.
also as a concept, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here. But I do think one of the things that we don't talk about a lot is our relationships to our bodies as
Mm,
a result of purity culture. I'm curious to know, like, because you had mentioned that in your opening, like,
yeah.
what impacts has that had on like you and your self image and your sense of self?
Yeah. Huge, massive. It's something I've been working on in therapy for a very long time. Yes, it stems from purity culture, but then also, unfortunately, the culture of Christianity in general, the overarching theme is that you are nothing without God. And
Mm,
you were born a sinner, you're a depraved, wretched soul, and your only redemption is Jesus. So, while I certainly can respect faith traditions and I think they can be a beautiful thing, it was very damaging to me. And it's something I still have to fight against every single day because that, in combination with the purity culture topic, rhetoric, what have you, I very much struggle with feeling like a bad person. Everything I do is bad. Everything I do is wrong. Every thought is wrong. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. I've done really well kind of getting a better sense of self, and it's something, I've worked on a lot in therapy. Yeah, the default position for me is that my desires are bad, I am
mm.
bad, sex is bad, me wanting sex is bad, my body is bad, the sexual parts of my body are bad. Like it is all bad. Everything is bad and I am bad. So it's just
Yeah.
it's a lot to work through and it's a lot to rewire your brain when shame and guilt and negative feelings, self-loathing, all of that is just kind of ingrained in you that you are not whole as yourself outside of religion or, your particular faith tradition. So it all kind of goes together.
I think that worthiness, like I think what you're talking about is like this like idea of
Yeah.
worthiness, which is like interesting because I feel like our generation has been trying really hard to realize our worth.
Hmm.
And there's so many inspirational, motivational like poems and songs and memes that are about you are worthy and you don't have to like do anything to be worthy of love and adoration and praise and
Yeah.
pleasure. And I do think worth is such an ingrained part of purity culture that like the idea that you in order to be worthy not only of God but also of like your husband,
Hmm.
because of course it's hetero.
Oh, of course. Can't be gay.
We're not even touching the queer.
No.
The idea that you are not worthy of a good marriage, a good partner, good sex,
Hmm.
any of that stuff, or even just like marriage as a whole because you have engaged in quote unquote impure activities is a really interesting one to me
Yeah.
because isn't the whole idea that like it's that everyone's worthy of Jesus's love or nobody's worthy of Jesus's love. But it's not some of us are based on how much sex you have. Like that's not the message.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing with that too is I'm sure you've heard the chewing gum analogy, the sermon illustration of the chewing gum.
No.
Gina Thin.
Please enlighten me. Take me to church.
Um, let's not, but I'll tell you what I learned there. So the chewing gum analogy, and I'm gonna get it wrong, thank God. Like, let's get it out of my brain. But
Yeah, great.
the concept is that you don't want gum that's already been chewed. If someone's offering you gum, you want a fresh piece from the pack. You unwrap it yourself, you put it in your mouth and you
Oh, I
chew it.
see.
If you've had sex, before you are
Hmm.
with the one that God has for you, your spouse, your partner. Well, they wouldn't say partner. Your spouse, your husband or your wife, hetero only. You don't want to offer them your dirty, chewed up, nasty gum that's been in everyone else's mouth. So like the the correlation between the two, like if you engage in these things, you are chewed up gum, dirty and wrong. And not only that, but all of this also applies to masturbation. You can't
Yeah.
even do that because you are thinking impure thoughts to get to where you need to go. So it is all wrong. Whether you're by yourself or you're with somebody else, there is no winning at all.
Yeah, I remember reading there's this like I don't remember what the book was called. It was like short stories from like Christian teens.
Mhm.
It's kind of like a chicken soup for the soul kind of thing,
Oh,
but like for Christians.
yeah.
And there was a story of a young man who he submitted a story about having masturbated
Mhm.
and feeling really guilty about it and like, repenting, blah blah blah. And the whole point he was making was like I realized that I was having sex with myself. I just
And
right. I so yes, because I think that's the thing is like first of all, if we're not talking about pleasure at all, then how are you supposed to know, even if you do wait till marriage, how are you supposed to know what you want without having had exploration, even if it's self exploration, right? Like, how are you supposed to know? How are you supposed to know that it's actually supposed to feel good, right? Is this why so many men can't help their women get to that end point? Like, and then we get into like faking culture and like ego stroking for men and all this real
yeah,
toxic stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of that is really prevalent in Christian marriages, especially because the culture is you get married young because you want to have sex. Like that's just and that's not true for every single young Christian couple. I know so many people that are in really loving Christian marriages and they got married in their early 20s, but at the same time, there are a lot of folks that get married in their 20s because that's what they have to do to be seen as right in having an intimate relationship. Like you certainly wouldn't live together before you get married. You certainly are not supposed to be having sex before you get married. So to be viewed, in the eyes of the church and your community as being good and on the right path, you make sure you get married before you do any of that stuff. So that leads to young marriages, early 20s. Not that that's inherently bad, but just the reasons are not great. And then lots of divorces. I'm one of them. I got married at 23 and was divorced before I was 30. So that's just how it goes.
Well, first
Um,
of all, congratulations on your divorce.
Thanks.
I
Appreciate it.
feel the need to say that to women who get divorced, especially when they got married a little too young. So, congrats.
I will say what's
Um,
funny about myself and my ex-husband, who is a really lovely person, by the way. We were best friends. He's, doing well. We keep in touch every so often, and we kind of just both agree that like, man, we were young and like really Christian. What were we doing? So, I have nothing but love and respect for him, but we should not have gotten married. We were babies. We did not know what we were doing. But we did that to be seen as right and correct
mhm.
because of purity culture. We never would have gotten to that point if it weren't for this overarching theme.
Yeah. So I want to know because obviously with Smutcap and Smutchat we're always talking about audio erotica,
Yeah,
and you just brought up the like idea of masturbation
yeah,
as being an impure act, and so I'm curious to know like how does audio erotica play into your life? Obviously you're part of the Smutcap, but
yeah,
I'm assuming audio erotica was part of your life before the Smutcap, so
yeah,
or even just erotica in general.
yeah,
So I'm curious to know like what role has that played in your journey and relationship to purity culture.
yeah, yeah. Well, audio erotica has been a really big deal for me because when I first found it via TikTok, when they were really amping up that marketing on TikTok and it got me. I was like, oh my God, what is this? And I had started reading like very light smut prior, very light. We're not talking about BB Easton level smut. We're talking about very light smut. We love you,
She'd be
BB.
so honored by that, by the way. I feel like she would love that.
Yes, we love you, BB, but it was not that. And that even had me like, oh, what is this? Because I very much ignored that part of my life. that need as a person, ignored it. Even though I've been out of the culture, I was like, I can live without it. It's fine. And then found audio erotica and really was like, oh my gosh. And I felt like bad about it.
Mm,
And this wasn't that long ago. I mean, like over a year at this point, but like I felt wrong and bad about it. For me specifically, I told my therapist about it and she's like, good for you. Yeah, do that. It's really helped me connect with myself in a way that I don't think I could have gotten I couldn't have gotten to this point without it. And so you hear people talk about how audio erotica can be healing, and it really can be because it helps you connect with yourself. Specifically, Tom York was the first creator that I really was listening to consistently. And there was one audio he had that I think actually was like a safe for work audio or
mm,
more like a sleep audio. He said a phrase that basically said, I'm going to get it wrong, but I think he said that pleasure is your birthright, but he used the phrase that it is your birthright,
mm,
speaking of pleasure. And I was like, my what? It's my birthright? And like
mm,
these types of things, like being able to connect with myself, hearing an audio erotica voice actor say that this is your birthright. You are entitled to feel good just because you were born. When my
mm,
whole life I heard, you're bad
mhm.
upon birth. You are sinful and wrong the moment you enter the world.
Yeah.
So that was huge for me. And as I just continued, enjoying it and having fun with it, yes, it's been very healing for me, but it's also just been really fun. It's been fun to learn about myself. We all know that some of the audios these creators put out are like hilarious. For instance, Pegging and Begging by the Devil of Dublin. I was cackling like the first several minutes of that audio because it was so funny. But then that audio gets really emotional at the end. So it's very much like be quiet, my soaps are on kind of vibes because these audios are just they're done so brilliantly and the stories are really immersive. But then also they can help you connect with yourself and learn, you know, who you are sexually, what you want sexually, what you don't want. So yes, they are healing. But they're also very fun. And for me, it's been a really fun discovery. And then, of course, I'd be remiss, to not mention what it's brought me in terms of community and like our friendship and the smut cap. Like it's been really great for me personally. But even without that, audio erotica has helped me come back to myself in a way that I didn't know was possible. I didn't know that I could get to that point. I'm in my late 30s and learning so much about myself from it.
That's beautiful. Well, first of all, never too late to learn more about
Yeah.
yourself. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the best things about audio erotica apps and voice actors. Because, like, I mean, I think it's not, I mean, I think it's worth just mentioning it's just fun. Like, it's just
Yeah.
it's a fun app.
Yes.
Like the audios are fun. And I think they do like a lot to help us reconnect with our bodies. I know for me, it's helped me maybe discover things about my body that I didn't realize that I liked, and that's been really a fun
Yeah.
journey. I also love that the audios a lot of the time they normalize how casual sex can be, meaning like it's not
Yes.
always this like super intense emotional experience. Like Cameron Kingston, I will say, is like the king of okay, my favorite audios genuinely are the super casual ones, the ones that are like, are you in the mood? I'm in the mood. And it's like I love that. I mean, listen, I love
Yeah.
a good yearning audio. I love a good L bomb every now and then, but I'm also not a super words of affirmation girly. And like some people might be surprised to hear this. I'm not like a sweet person.
You heard it here first, folks. Gene Bean is not sweet. Great
Like,
friend, not sweet.
yeah, not as don't count on me being sweet. But also just like the really sugary
Yeah.
audios.
Yeah.
I don't hate them. They're just not my thing. I think Cavern and Dr. Rapture are two artists that do the very casual thing very well, and I love that because it makes me. I feel like I had this belief that it's like this super serious thing, and you can never You can never have an awkward moment. You can never not know what you're doing. You can never let your partner feel like they don't know what they're doing. And like you can't ever laugh during sex. And like I actually think laughing during sex is one of the most intimate things you can do.
Yeah.
And I love that these audios help us, maybe hopefully are helping us come to that realization.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just an interesting thing to think about because what I think I've discovered or realized again over the last couple of years is like this lack of comprehensive sex ed, lack of conversations around women's bodies, women's pleasure. I think what we're finding is so many people don't know what they like
Yeah.
and don't have a healthy relationship to pleasure. So like that Tom York phrase that you were talking about like this is your birthright. That's actually a pretty, I don't know, it's like at the same time it's like the most basic statement, it's also the most profound statement.
Yeah.
And it's profound due to the basicness of the statement. And
Hmm.
I would hope that more people start to believe that and internalize that. I want to ask you, because we should probably wrap up, which is a shame because I want to talk to you for 4 hours. Obviously, you've been on this journey of sort of rewiring your brain, rediscovering yourself, your body, pleasure, fun for the last 10, 15 years.
Hmm.
And I know that there have to be members of our community who are in different stages of that.
Yeah.
What kind of advice or thoughts or opinions do you have to share with them?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That makes me a little emotional because it's still a process for me. And I think it's something I am going to be continuing. Like this journey, I think will continue likely the rest of my life because I think I'll uncover different facets of healing for myself, and different ways that I come back to myself coming out of purity culture. So I think I would say to anyone in our community who I know there are a lot of people that are similar to me, and I would just say the things that I have to remind myself, which is that you are not bad. You are not wrong for having these desires. You were born with them, and you deserve pleasure. You deserve safety in that. And be patient with yourself. I have often, and I still do, get really angry with myself, and angry at what I was raised in because I'm like, I feel behind. And I know that there are other people in our community that have felt behind as well. But we don't need to feel that way. Like, we're still here, there's still time. It's easy to be like, why did nobody tell me this? And there have been times where I have had like huge strides in my growth. And I've been like, why did nobody tell me this sooner? How come I didn't know about this sooner? And I've gotten very angry and I've had to work through that, and part of that grief. So just be patient with yourself. There is time. Let yourself learn and just remember that you are not bad and you deserve to feel good and you deserve to feel connected to yourself.
That's beautiful, Kris. I don't have anything to add to that. I think you said that so, so beautifully. And I think that's a really good note to end our little Smut Chat on. So thank you so much, Kris, for joining me on Smut Chat with Jeen Bean and talking about a really personal and important topic. But until then, everyone, stay smutty.
Thanks, Jean.